Welcome to Morning Joe Weekend on this Saturday morning. Let's get you caught up on the big stories of the week.
And we're Mike and I are writing about this next week, this idea, like we're scaling sin. Like, and again, I'm not here to judge people, but like suddenly you can get high wherever you want to get. Soon you're going to be able to do mushrooms. You can gamble on anything, get your Robinhood app, gamble on the markets. You just go down the list and you give all of these things to people in an unsupervised, lightly regulated environment. And this is what you get. And you're hitting on the part that is just an outrageous level of corruption. People should be unbelievably pissed if there are people in this government or near this government that are betting on war, betting on activity based on inside information. It's no different than the crap that's happening on Capitol Hill, where members of Congress are allowed to buy and sell stocks based on information that they're getting from a paycheck that you gave them to put them on Capitol Hill to do your work, and instead they're padding their pockets. That's where people should be losing their marbles. It's all nuts, and people have every right to rebel against it.
I agree with that. It's crazy. I've been looking on these Kalshi sites and Polymarket sites just since we did this segment, because I was genuinely wondering if there were bets about whether this guy who bet on the Maduro raid would get a pardon. Unfortunately, not yet bettable. But there are things like, will Trump be photographed every day this week? You can bet on that. I mean, it's absurd stuff. And look, this is not, I mean, some of what Jim was talking about sounded kind of fun, honestly, drinking and gambling. But the truth is that this is going to end up with a lot of people in bad situations, not to mention all the insider trading. But gambling is an addiction. People are going to lose their life savings if they haven't already. We've already seen huge problems, obviously, in the NBA. If you remember, we started the season with a coach being arrested for gambling. This is a huge problem, and it's only going to get worse in politics, too. And there seems to be zero appetite to actually try to put some sort of regulatory framework around this stuff.
Yeah, it came too fast. We're not ready. There's no regulatory framework for this, not yet. And we have seen, lots of suspicious bets tied to Pentagon activities, time to moves the administration has made, lots of speculation as to who's profiting off of that. And Willie, on this one here, again, this is classified information that was used. And yes, that mission went smashingly well. And President Trump even made a joke about it about Pete Rose yesterday. But this is the kind of thing that has real consequences and could someday really lead to a lot of danger for people.
Much more still ahead on Morning Joe Weekend. Stay with us.
Sorry for misleading people, and it was not intentional. That's all I'll say.
There have been a lot of people that have been saying, oh, well, these are just, and it's what I was saying as well when the polls didn't seem to show anything different. But a lot of people were saying, well, it's just the talkers. It's just the people on podcasts, on TV. But you see Tucker Carlson say something like that yesterday. Tucker, of course, has been wildly popular when he was at Fox News. His podcast, wildly popular. The same thing with Megyn Kelly. Megyn Kelly has made some extraordinary, piercing, and actually, I think pretty tough indictments against this administration and the war in Iran, what was promised while they were running, what they're doing now. Of course, Marjorie Taylor Greene and many other people. And again, yeah, these are people who have said many things we disagree with, but we're not the audience. The audience are the people that voted for Donald Trump. It's hard to find three people who are more persuasive in making the argument that Donald Trump should be president of the United States in 2024 than Tucker Carlson, Megyn Kelly, and Marjorie Taylor Greene. And now all three of them, for a variety of reasons, have done what Tucker just did there and said, I made a mistake. And I didn't do it intentionally, but it's something I'm going to have to live with for quite some time. It was very telling. He and his brother Buckley, very telling what they said yesterday.
Yeah, and all the people you mentioned there, including Tucker, are not just news analysts to a lot of people. They're a news source. Much as it may be dismaying to us, a lot of young people are not watching shows like this or network television to get their news. They open their phone and they listen to what someone they trust, like Tucker or Megyn or Ben Shapiro or Joe Rogan, you can go down the list, what they're saying on Instagram in a short clip. And that clip from Tucker has resonated quite a bit over the last couple of days. So we have seen these moments before. We'll see if it holds. I mean, Joe Rogan a couple of days ago was ripping Donald Trump about the war in Iran, and then the next day he was standing behind him in the Oval Office at the White House on a separate issue, in fairness. But we'll see. We'll see if it holds. But certainly this is really searing criticism in a way we haven't seen. And there was more in a new piece in the conservative publication, The Washington Examiner, titled, "Donald Trump is Losing His Mind." Former conservative member of the European Parliament, a guy named Dan Hannan, writes this, quote, "Imagine it was someone other than President Donald Trump. Suppose a different leader were posting deranged rants in the small hours, insulting the spiritual leader of 1.3 billion Catholics, threatening entire civilizations with annihilation, and comparing himself to God. What would be the reaction? We all know the answer. Both parties would be rushing to bundle him out of office before he did irreversible harm to the republic. Yet, as we all also know, different rules apply to Trump. Democrats, having had their fingers burned by 2 failed impeachment attempts, are reluctant to try again, for they know that there is no surer way to boost his support. Republicans, who privately despair at the electoral damage he is doing, let alone the constitutional damage, are paralyzed by fear of upsetting their primary voters. Everyone around him can see it. Yet whether from ambition, cowardice, or weary acceptance, they keep looking for ways to rationalize his behavior. The tragedy is no longer Trump's. It is now America's." Again, that's from the Washington Examiner, written by a very conservative writer there, John.
Yeah, the venue for this piece was eye-opening. The Washington Examiner usually cheers on what President Trump does and that his agenda. But this is now the latest in a series of voices here. And look, we have played this game for a decade in terms of, like, what would the reaction be if President Obama, President Biden, President Clinton, whoever it is, insert Democrat, did what President Trump just did. But the author here picks a couple of good examples. Comparing yourself to God and threatening to wipe out a civilization, that's a new place. And I do think we are seeing more questions about President Trump's fitness for office, not necessarily his mental acuity, but his erraticism in the decisions he is making. And Republicans are right now also saying we're worried. And we saw the new polling caddy from the AP, just put it up right there. Not only 31% of Republicans now disapprove of President Trump's behavior. That's a shocking number for someone who has commanded utter fealty from the GOP. Only 23% of independents do approve, and this all combined leaves you with a net approval rating overall of 33%. Just a dreadful number for President Trump, and a number that I think is impacted by this behavior, by this sort of this more than erratic, but at times downright nonsensical and dangerous rhetoric that most Americans are saying, this is not what we want out of our president. This is not what we voted for. This is not making our life any better.
Yeah, if you look at the recent history of polling, it's clearly the combination of the erraticism combined with taking the country to war that has Republicans upset. We were all talking about the polls at the very beginning of the war that showed that Republicans were by and large with President Trump. They were still at 80 to 90% approval rating of the president, and now to have that 31% disapproval rating, that is the most striking number to me in all of those polling numbers.
Still ahead, we'll show you the moment President Trump's Fed chair nominee, Kevin Warsh, declined to say whether Joe Biden won the 2020 election.
Wasn't happening, we'd be voting to send Mr. Warsh out of committee next week or the week after, and he'd be seated by the 15th. And that's still possible if we just get past this. He was presented an offer this morning.
That's Republican member of the Senate Banking Committee, Senator Tom Tillis, reaffirming his vow to block President Trump's pick for the next chair of the Federal Reserve as long as the Justice Department continues its criminal probe into the current Fed chair, Jerome Powell, over renovations to the Fed's headquarters. That nominee, Kevin Warsh, appeared before the Banking Committee yesterday, where he was pressed on everything from monetary policy to his ties to the president and even the 2020 election.
So independence takes courage. Let's check out your independence and your courage. We'll start easy. Mr. Warsh, did Donald Trump lose the 2020 election?
We try to keep politics, if I'm confirmed, out of the Federal
I'm just
Reserve.
asking you a factual question. I need to know, I need to measure your independence and your courage.
Senator, I believe that this body certified that election many years ago.
That's not the question I'm asking. I'm asking, did Donald Trump lose in 2020?
And I'm suggesting you in 2020, the Fed made a huge inflation problem, and you certified the election.
So let me ask you another question.
Out of monetary policy.
In our meeting, you said you would
be
independent because you're, quote, a tough guy. Those were your words, tough guy. And you will be able to stand up to President Trump. So let's try it again. Name one aspect of President Trump's economic agenda with which you disagree.
Well, Senator, the Federal Reserve in recent years has wandered outside of its remit, wandered into other areas.
I'm asking for something
That's not something I'm
disagree
prepared
with Donald
to do.
Trump on.
If I'm confirmed, the Federal Reserve should stay in its lane.
Just one little place where you disagree with Donald Trump.
Well, I do have a disagreement, actually, Senator, with the president. I think even this morning he said that he thought I was out of central casting. I think central casting, I'd look older, grayer, and maybe show up here with a cigar of sorts.
Quite adorable. But, you know, we need a Fed chair who is independent. That's the only way we preserve the independence of the Federal Reserve. If you can't answer these questions, you don't have the courage and you don't have the independence.
Yeah, I mean, if you cannot answer a question that you could take judicial notice of in any courtroom in America, except for maybe Eileen Cannon's, then you don't have the courage to stand up to the president when he needs to be stood up to, so we don't have inflation exploding again. I mean, 63 federal courts said that Joe Biden won the election. Donald Trump's lawyers did not win a single hearing in front of any of those federal courts. And you have somebody 6 years later that can't say that Joe Biden got elected president of the United States and Donald Trump lost then? I mean, even Alito and Thomas on the Supreme Court said when a Pennsylvania case went up, hey, the outcome of this particular case wouldn't make a difference because Biden won by the extent that he won by. But a Fed chair can't even say that in 20. That's sad. That is really sad. It's really pathetic. Catherine Rampell, whose newsletter writes a great newsletter, Receipt, said that first of all that this nominee is actually has a very good background, but for the fact that he was kowtowing to Donald Trump and seemed to be scared of his own shadow yesterday, would quite possibly make a very effective Fed chair. But she said he failed on three major parts. Number one, whether Donald Trump's investigation into Jerome Powell was appropriate, refused to answer that. Number two, how would he respond if Donald Trump threatened him with retribution because he had disagreed with his monetary policy? Again, monetary policy to keep inflation down for working Americans. And then number three, of course, was Joe Biden elected president. He could not answer that question. And then gave a cutesy little glib answer on the one thing that he disagreed with Donald Trump on, with some self-deferential attempts at humor.
He spent nearly 4 decades as a Navy SEAL, commanded at every level, and oversaw the raid that killed Osama bin Laden. He's also a best-selling author with a new book out today titled Duty, Honor, Country, and Life, a Tribute to the American Spirit.
You always, in your books, kind of lift us out of the morass of the daily politics and remind us about some of the things that make this country so great. And they're everywhere you look still in this country, despite some of the headlines we read every day. So I want to go through some of the speeches that you highlight here. But big picture, why did you sit down to write this?
Yeah, because of what you just raised. The fact of the matter is, I think there is a lot of concern about where we are in the country. And I hope as people read this book, that they'll come away and recognize that, look, we may be going through some tough times, but there are great, great Americans out there that have this American spirit, this idea that we can get anything done. We can send men and women around the moon today. We can put them on the moon. We can cure cancer. But also, the book is a little bit of my thoughts on democracy at 250 years. So, you know, where is our democracy now, and what do we need to do to continue to keep our democracy moving in the right direction? The good news is, I hope people will be inspired and uplifted by this book. But there is a couple of cautionary notes in there about, you know, what we need to do to continue to move America in the right direction.
One of the speeches you highlight in your book is a 2020 commencement address delivered virtually to students at MIT during the pandemic.
Right.
Let's listen to part of that message.
As I grew up and traveled the world, and as I saw more than my share of war and destruction, I came to the hard truth that Captain America isn't coming to the rescue. There is no Superman, no Batman, no Wonder Woman, no Black Widow, no Avengers, no Justice League, no Gandalf, no Harry Potter, and no Aquaman. If we are going to save the world from pandemics, war, climate change, poverty, racism, extremism, intolerance, then you, the brilliant minds of MIT, you are going to have to save the world. It will be up to you. But never, never in my life have I been so confident that the fate of the world is in good hands. Go forth and be the heroes we need you to be.
Oh, that's wonderful. And how important is that message today as we move toward an uncertain future, looking at this war, but also ahead of the midterms?
Yeah, well, again, this it was a commencement address for the students at MIT. But I would tell you, I think, again, when people start complaining about what's happening in Washington, and I'm talking to a large crowd, I say, well, let me tell you where the problem is. It's with us. This is a democracy. We have an opportunity to change it. We can vote the people in. We can vote the people out. And if we want to have a change, let's make that change occur. Yeah, absolutely. And we can all go out there. And again, as I told the young students, you know, be these heroes. Be courageous. Be humble. Be men and women of integrity. Have compassion. Follow the rule of law. These are important things for our democracy. And take the time to speak up when you need to.
I'm curious, watching that speech, I was thinking about where we were in that moment. In the middle of a pandemic, protests in the streets during the Black Lives Matter movement after George Floyd was murdered. It felt chaotic. It felt uncertain. We didn't know if there was what was going to happen tomorrow. So I'm curious, even today, because people ask us all the time, are we going to be okay? What's going on? How do you maintain, not in some Pollyannish way, but how do you keep your optimism about America?
Because I spend time with the youth of America. As I said, I teach a graduate class at the LBJ School at the University of Texas. I travel all over the country. I travel all over the world. And when I meet these young men and women, and older men and women, I see that they continue to have the American spirit. They continue to believe in the values that we all think are important. This idea of, again, liberty and justice and equality and things that have made us a great country. And so, as bad as things may seem, we're going to be okay. We just have some work to do.
Coming up on Morning